Welcome to Roots and Branches of Lehi, the podcast where we get to know the faces, stories, and lives that make up our community. I'm Ryan Harding, and I started this podcast as a way for us all to connect with the people we live alongside. Growing up in a small town, I learned that connections go beyond blood. They're built through shared experiences, friendships, and the moments we celebrate together. Each week, we'll sit down with someone new from Lehi to share their unique story, their passions, and what they love most about living here. So whether you've been here for years or just arrived, join us as we deepen our roots and reach out to our branches one story at a time. Welcome, Charlene Freestone. So you get to be here on the podcast, Lehi Roots and Branches. So excited to have you.
Excited to be.
Good. Yes. Our little community podcast here. So you wear several hats, one of which has to do with Primary Children's Hospital, right? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role there and give us a little introduction, I guess.
I work at the Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital, Larry H. Miller and Gail Miller Family Campus that's located in Lehi.
Okay.
So it's been a fantastic opportunity for me, but it is one of several things that I do. I've lived in Lehi with my husband, Greg Freestone, since I graduated BYU in 2009.
Okay.
I am not from Utah County. I grew up in a combination of Denver and California. Okay. But with the recession at the time of my graduation, it became pretty apparent that we were going to be here and we were just going to kind of scrape up what limited opportunities there were that year. I had some opportunities that I'd hoped to have after graduation just completely dissolve with the recession. And so I went from studying business management, always knowing that I wanted to pursue teaching adults. Corporate training was something I did for the university in their food services department. And I knew that that was something I wanted to keep doing, but it's something that's a very limited opportunity and that I would have to kind of find where that spot was. So it was something that I kind of had to wait for, and it's been worth waiting for. Good. So I have 3 children. They are 14, 12, and 8. Nice. We're a big adventure family. We love the outdoors, traveling. We love doing all the things in Utah, winter, summer. And I do wear lots of hats. One of the things that I would say kind of started where I'm at now, working at Primary Children's Hospital, is that I very quickly, in having my children moving to Lehi from an apartment complex, when I was in my house, I very quickly was like, wow, this is so lonely with this little human. And I complained to my mother, and she very distinctly was like, oh, like, you need to make your own community.
Yeah.
She's like, it's not going to find you.
Yeah.
She's like, you have to make it. And I really...
That's good advice. Yeah.
She's a good lady. Inspired me to kind of create different communities. And so I started with, like, a mom's play group. I started with just setting up events on Facebook. Like, I wanted to meet up with other moms, and I ended up teaching them different things that I was good at or worked at. Mm-hmm. And one of them was teaching people how to actually use baby carriers. So I taught people how to use baby carriers, and we ended up starting a formal nonprofit chapter of an international organization for baby wearing. And so I ran that with a couple friends for a few years. We have since passed it off with 2020, COVID and all those changes, to actually the WIC and different. So we dissolved our lending library of baby carriers and distributed them to the community. But that was the thing that kind of kickstarted that I was going to be growing a community here in Lehi, and that it would always circulate around parents. But as my babies got bigger, I kind of had this like moment where I was like, it's not going to be babies. Like, how could I keep doing this?
Yeah.
But when it was babies, I started out, my first kind of little formal business venture in Lehi was we started a natural parenting boutique on Lehi Main Street, actually in the old Lehi Hotel right by the train tracks. Nice. And we rented from the midwife that I think is still there now, and some other businesses. I mean, where else can you have a baby, buy stuff, gems, and I think at one time you could rent wedding dresses in the same building.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive. And so we started our shop there, and we sold cloth diapers, baby carriers, but our biggest focus was on parent education classes and trying to be a community meeting space. We pretty quickly outgrew the space we had. They needed it for some other purposes, so we did move up to Sandy, sadly. Okay. It was going to be the best commute ever, 3 minutes.
Yeah, that would have been, yes.
It was going to be so good.
That's my commute right now.
Yeah, that's your commute right now. I'm so jealous. But I was lucky. I got to move my shop, Baby Boutique, up to Sandy where it was up until April of 2020. So COVID, for a lot of people, I think reset their career. For me, the day of the Utah earthquake, I had the realization that no one is ever going to bring their like small children to stores anymore. Like I was just very aware that if I kept this going, I was just going to lose money.
Sure. And
I folded super quickly. I sold my share to my co-owners. I was like, I have no faith in this going forward.
Sure.
Good luck. So some of them have kept it going in different capacities, but that was my just moment where I realized that we were going to have to redo how we're building community with COVID. And so that's when my nonprofit kind of fizzled out. That's when I stopped working with my boutique. And so I ended up working at my children's school and got really involved as a teacher's aide there and got to see how everyone kind of banded together to keep everything going during COVID. And that was really neat to be a part of. And so I got to work in education. So I did a little bit of retail, did a little bit of education, and then I have now found my way back with working at Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital, specifically as a child passenger safety technician.
Okay. And so that's perfect. So that gives us a little bit of background of maybe, kind of how you got into that, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
I skipped the final jump. With my shop, we were going to sell car seats.
Okay.
And so you needed someone that was certified in that capacity to legally sell car seats with some of the higher end companies.
Sure.
It's not a requirement at like Target or Walmart, but some of the higher end companies want that education to be given as part of the purchase. So I volunteered as tribute, and I just absolutely loved the community of those community health workers.
Gotcha. And you may have already answered this, I guess, but maybe with your mom, but how did you get involved in a career focusing on children and families and stuff like that, especially with primary children's? What got you, where's the motivation come from, I guess?
I think they found me because I was very set on that I was going to be a corporate businesswoman. I was just going to be with other adults. And I do actually still do that. I work as a private contractor doing project management work for big tech companies. And so I'm still involved in that work, but in the small opportunities I was given from just people needing help, feeling so overwhelmed in those moments of early parenting that it just fell on me. And it kept being a thing that was made clear that I needed to be a part of. So,
and how did you get so tell me exactly what you do then with primary children's. Tell me what is your role there, I guess, then right now.
Yes, so I am as a child passenger safety technician in a general capacity. They might participate in the biggest thing that you would say their like primary job is that you're going to provide one-on-one parent education for how the parent is going to install the car seat in the vehicle. And with that in a hospital capacity, we have a more diverse component because day to day, a child passenger safety technician, if they work at like the health department or if they work at a fire station, or I have a friend that works for the highway safety department doing this. Okay. They are just checking people's car seats they already own or providing like seats that were purchased with grants to parents that need them. Whereas at the hospital, we do absolutely do that. Okay. And that's one of my favorite things I do there. But additionally, there is children that cannot be transported safely with the car seats that are just available commercially.
Sure.
And so if you think of some of the surgeries that like they may perform there, if a child is getting a spica cast, like if they're having both hips operated on, they are going to have a cast that is from their armpits with maybe a bar between their legs, and they're just not going to fit.
Yeah.
Or we might have children that have spina bifida where they have open incisions on their back, and they may even need to be transported laying down, face down, actually like in just seats that you may have never seen that look like a giant basket that's attached to the car. And so that's a special certification in addition to being a child passenger safety technician. I'm actually doing the formal training for it Friday.
Oh, wow.
So
nice.
Everyone at the Lehi location of Primary Children's will then have that certification to work with families with special medical needs and transportation needs to help transport either kids home from procedures. And then the third thing we do there is work with parents that have kids that may have behavioral issues with transporting.
Okay.
So if they have different challenges that make it so they can't sit still or might try to escape, we would also work with those children as well.
Now, is this the dream job? Jane Marie had told me that you landed your dream job. Is this it? Tell me that story, I guess, with landing the dream job.
It is one of those that I would say it is absolutely in like a dream capacity.
Okay.
For a hot sec, I mean, it's me. I always love to be a little bit more in charge. And so at Primary Children's Hospital in Lehi right now, I'm working as an on-call child passenger safety technician. So I'm working, doing the things I love with people I love, fantastic management. So I would say it's the dream job if I got to do it all the time.
Sure.
That would be the true dream, but it's fantastic to be with the crew that I work there. I had said that I was going to work in my same capacity actually quite a few years ago up at the Salt Lake campus. And at the Primary Children's Salt Lake campus, I had applied for a position, and I actually is one of the only jobs I've ever applied to this day that I didn't get. They came back to me and said, after I interviewed, we didn't realize you're outside how far away you can be to work on call.
Oh, shoot.
And so they were like, yeah, we can't have you, but like, if we ever open a second location, you should apply again.
You're our girl. Yes. Okay.
And so I had it in the back of my head. And this hospital has been announced for years.
Yeah.
It's been something that I've really just wanted and wished and waited for to come down here. It's a tangent, but I have a child that was born with needs that required surgeries.
Okay.
And at the time, that would have only been done, the time the child was born, it was only done up in Salt Lake. And they were actually over capacity in 2011, because it was the post-recession baby boom, that they actually had to move surgeons down to Utah Valley Hospital to do my son's surgery there. So they couldn't even fit him at the hospital. And back then, one of the nurses that helped my son, we went to take him home, and one of the things I do day to day at the hospital is if a child with like oxygen issues is needing to be discharged, the NICU nurses will oversee a car seat test where they install them in their car seat,
Yep.
They check their oxygen. But if it's looking like they may not pass, they'll bring us in to support them and troubleshoot things that might be affecting that. And so my son actually needed to have that happen. And we were really lucky that his nurse that he'd had was a child passenger safety technician.
Okay.
So she had that additional training, and that was long before my store or before I even knew it was a job. And I thought it was something you had to be maybe a nurse for at the time.
Sure.
And
But that's not the case.
Yeah, it is not the case. It is a certification that you can get just on your own. Anyone that is passionate about working with parents, children, oftentimes underprivileged communities, it's a certification that you can pay for on your own. It's a 4-day training. They host it about twice a year. And it's a cool opportunity for anybody, and it's a very welcoming community. They always want more volunteers to come and work at different events or checkpoints. And so it's something that even if you necessarily couldn't find paid work in, if you're passionate about working with parents and children, they'd love to have more. So it's not something you need to start just because of a career in it.
Sure.
And so I actually did my first day with Intermountain exactly 12 years later and at Utah Valley Hospital.
Okay.
To the day my son had been discharged from that first car seat test.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I was looking at my Intermountain badge.
Yeah.
And I remember like looking up at that out of the building and be like, I'm back, but this time I'm helping people here.
That's awesome.
And I thought that when I was there was a lady that did parent volunteer coordination. And I was like, her job is so cool. I want to do that someday. And I've even run into this woman at the grocery store randomly.
Really?
Like, different city a couple of years later. And I was like, are you still doing that job? And she's like, yeah, I haven't retired yet. And I was like, okay. So I can't take your job yet. She's like, you may not.
Not yet. Nope.
But
not yet.
I've asked her.
Yeah, well, that's important. That's good.
Followed up on it.
Well, tell me what some of the common challenges that parents face, I guess, with new kids that you guys kind of help, facilitate or solve, I guess, for them.
Yeah. So we typically at Primary Children's Hospital in Lehi don't get the like newborn discharge as much because
Okay.
babies are not necessarily like born there, they're transported there.
Sure.
So we might do discharges with those parents, but one of the issues I think any parent being discharged with like your baby and your newborn is that a lot of parents don't know that every nurse that helps you with a car seat, like when you've had a newborn, has that extra training. So you may ask them, I think I've asked questions when I had some of my other kids, and they actually legally can only parrot kind of like their little script. So they may actually not know how car seats work beyond how that newborn should look that very first time.
Okay.
And so there is a lot of education that those parents may still need.
Yeah.
But in their minds, they're like, oh, the nurse told me it looks good, I'm done.
Yeah.
But children's safety, unfortunately, is not a one and done thing.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to know that there is more resources out there for them. Car seat checks at our hospital and at the different health departments all over Utah are free.
Okay.
And they love when you call. They love when you make an appointment. They are not there to judge how your child arrived. We always have our mantra is that they leave safer than they arrived. Like we may not be able to do things perfectly. We know everyone's circumstance and situation is different, but we always want them safer.
So how does that look? So somebody calls, their kid's now 2-3 years old, right? So obviously, they're a little bigger than they were when they were newborn, right? Hey, am I still doing this right? So they just call and kind of walk us through that process. What does that look like?
Yeah, so the hospital or the different health departments, if you call them, you can be directed to a child passenger safety technician, car seats. Like say I want to have someone do a car seat check. That's
Sure.
kind of the big term that parent is looking for. And then they'll ask you a couple questions. They'll ask you the height, weight, ballpark.
Sure.
For your child and their age. They may ask you what seat they're riding in currently, just so they're getting a mental picture. They'll ask you what kind of car it is, maybe what year, just so that they can do a little bit of background information to make sure that they know what kind of situation. Not every car, as lots of parents may have learned, is easy to pop a car seat into.
No, some are very difficult, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Some you might be fighting for your life.
Yes.
Out there. I actually did my car seat training when it was the second week of June in 2018, and it was 104, and you learn outside.
Yeah.
Some is in a classroom, so we are installing car seats in cars when it's 103. So I feel for parents that are always fighting the good fight, trying to make sure that everything looks appropriate.
Well, so any particular experiences stand out to you? Any memorable? I mean, you've been doing this for a little while. Any I don't know, any experiences from this, that you want to share?
So it goes back to the question, how I ended up at primaries.
Yeah.
I was working at an event in, I want to say it was the fall of 2021,
Okay.
where we do a child safety week in September. And so there might be different checks around the different valleys. It's just it's a national child safety week.
Sure.
So the different child passenger safety technicians will do different checkpoints where people can just come and have their car seats checked out. Oftentimes, they will have car seats that have been purchased by grants that are not income-based. So sometimes at those checks, I do one in July as well, that if you just come and need a new seat, we just give them away.
Wow, nice.
And so I think sometimes people get caught in that gap of I don't necessarily qualify for maybe a government program that
Yeah.
I'd get something from, but there are lots of resources that we still want to make people aware of. And so I was at that checkpoint, and a family came that actually had the same minivan that I had when I was doing an in-home daycare, and I'd had to transport 5 kids that were all under 8.
Oh, wow.
I were taking my son to swim lessons, and I'd be moving car seats around, and I'd be like, this is rough.
Sure.
But it was such a hard car seat check, because normally they try to keep one. They also call this CPST. It's probably a good acronym to start using. They assigned 2 of us to the same car because it was just they had 6 children in this 7-seater minivan.
Yeah.
And I think they arrived with 5 car seats.
Okay. Fine.
And so they had 2 technicians working on it. And actually, 5 car seats is a bit of a stretch. One of the children was on a wooden box that I think that had been secured to the vehicle, if I distinctly remember. And I do chuckle at it a bit, but I also can at the same time hold space for that they were doing the best they can.
Sure. Of
They
course.
thought they were boosting them up. Like, I appreciate that they were trying.
Yeah.
They also were trying to fit 3 car seats in the back row so close together. Minivan third rows are suspiciously tiny.
Agreed.
And they had daisy chained the lap extender belts that should only be used in a medical situation where you cannot fit your seatbelt, and it is like approved, and it's just a very small window of who needs them.
Yeah.
They had daisy chained them through the outer car seats in towards the center one and then back out and buckled. So there was a lot of ingenuity that I could really appreciate.
Sure.
They were doing their best with what they had. The other technician and I worked painstakingly to get this family new seats, get them all organized in the car. We worked with the parent. We got everyone in as best of a seat as we could. We're about to shake hands, send her on her way, give her some education materials, and she goes, but where should I put the newborn baby I'm pregnant with? And we just stared at each other, the other technician and I, and went, what do you mean? She's like, well, I need to be able to transport this child in this car as well. And in that kind of situation, you are going to start needing to move maybe a child that was younger than that 13 to the front seat.
Yeah.
In a situation where you're going to do the best you can. So we moved a kid up, scooted the seat back away from the airbag, and proceeded to have to rearrange every single child in the car. There was no car seat in this minivan that sadly worked just anywhere or fit the kid in any situation. So we had to like redo
Basically
the seat
redo
registration, everything,
yeah.
start completely from scratch. We were
Yeah.
at least like an hour and 20
Oh, wow.
minutes into
Oh,
this,
wow.
installing car seats, like physical labor with this woman.
Sure.
And totally had to start over. And the woman I was working with was like, wow, you really know your stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, unfortunately, because I own this vehicle.
so you
and
know
have
exactly
this-
where. Yeah.
Like, you can give me credit as in my job
Sure.
capacity for sure. And she said, no, don't sell yourself short. You were problem solving and really working to empower this parent.
100%.
I would love to have you work with me up at the Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake. And I was like, oh, I applied for that. They didn't want me. And she's like, I don't think that's true. She goes, I'm in charge now. Such and such lady retired, and
now we want you.
we would love to have you. And I was like, no, I'm still physically too far away, so I can't work through right now. She goes, well, we're going to have that Lehi one. When we have Lehi, it was always this carrot dangled.
Yeah, yeah.
So even years in advance, she was like, you really need to work with me
Yeah.
up at the hospital. And so this Christmas, my Christmas card from her said, here's to more years working with Dodge Caravans together. I'm so glad you said yes.
That's awesome. So little did you know you were doing a job interview at that
I was
time
doing
too,
a job
I guess,
interview,
right?
and she got to see me.
In action there.
And it has been a funny joke that exact year car layout weird situation has popped up when I am working more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And so I'm just where I need to be,
Yeah.
fighting the good fight in a car that isn't laid out as perfectly as I would have loved for car seats. Who knew? Minivans, some of them are super easy for car seats, and others are sometimes the hardest vehicle I work in.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so you mentioned a couple resources already. You know, the how people sometimes can get free car seats, do car seat checks, different things like that. Tell me, what other resources are available for new parents that we haven't talked about yet? I guess that things that they would want to know. Any other resources available?
For not just new parents, but I think all parents
Okay.
wanting to really verse themselves in safety. Intermountain's website is a great resource. We do have the car seat safety, and they have resources on videos of like what seat might be a good seat for your child.
Okay.
And so I mentioned, I'll have to do my list in my head. I know I mentioned so we have, health departments are great.
Yep.
We have, I did say fire stations, but I think I would like to use the moment to just remind everyone. Historically, that was something that people would talk to firefighters about. I don't actually know how it got started, but very few fire stations in our state actually employ a child passenger safety technician. I do, however, work with some fantastic firefighters that do have that certification, but
the vast majority, not so much.
Just because a firefighter looked at your child's car seat means absolutely nothing for.
Okay.
And the same with police officers. I work with some fantastic ones. Some really should not be commenting on something outside their wheelhouse.
Sure, yeah.
And I have heard them give terrible advice.
Sure. So again, the advice then is, hey, go to the hospital, right?
Yep.
Go to, especially now, Primary Children's here in Utah County. It's a great place to go.
And all of the health departments in Utah County.
Okay, all the health departments.
All of the health departments in Utah County have either they have a child passenger safety technician or have the resources to send you one.
Okay.
So I've gone down and worked doing events with Payson. I've done them in Provo. And so if you're not even just right here in Lehi, there's great options in multiple areas.
Okay.
And then, of course, at the Salt Lake Primary Children's Hospital, there's resources there 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Lehi is just 11 to 4, Monday through Friday. Okay. But those are the biggest safety resources for sure in the general area. And the cool thing is, both hospitals now can do virtual car seat checks.
Oh, really?
So I think that's a resource that's really underrated. And so that's still a free check.
Good.
We all have our smartphones. They set it up. And I think that's actually a really good way sometimes to do it, because it forces you as the parent to be like, it's literally me.
Yeah.
I have to touch this.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're here, but they're hearing with someone that's helping them troubleshoot, because you can pick up a manual for a car seat.
Yeah, of course.
And be like, I as someone who specializes, have looked at certain brands of labeling and been like, what on earth are they trying to say?
I know.
Like, what on earth do they want me to do with this information? Some of it sounds outright like conflicting.
Yeah. My wife has talked about, she would like to rewrite basically instruction manuals for not just car seats, but pretty much everything, where she's like, who writes these things? So I'm with you. I hear that. I think that's why it would be nice to have somebody help walk them through. And I think the other part of that's important is, because I know sometimes asking for help, especially on things where a parent could quote unquote get in trouble. That's why I like that you started with saying, hey, we're not judging you. This isn't like hey, we're here to help you. It's not like, sure, you could be doing it wrong, but you don't get in trouble for it, I guess. And I think that's important, because sometimes people are afraid to ask for help because they don't want to draw attention to the fact that they're using a wooden box, to do it. And you're like, hey, that's fine. I get what you're doing. Let's try this or let's try that. And so I like that you point that out, because I think sometimes people fear those things because they don't want to get in trouble, right?
Absolutely. As a parent, you just don't want to be called out.
Yeah, of course.
And that's a hard thing even amongst your friends. You may see that someone is doing something maybe incorrect or safe with their children. It's not your place. It's kind of a hard thing to be like, oh, you're doing it wrong. But a better option could be, hey, did you know about this resource?
Sure.
I had them check my car seat.
Yeah.
It was super cool.
Sure.
Not like, hey, yours is wrong.
Yeah.
Just like, I did this cool thing and it was so nice. They showed me how to put it in easier, faster. It was great. You should totally go too.
That way you're not the bad guy, right?
Don't be the bad guy.
you can point. I love that advice. That's great advice. That way you can still maintain friendship.
I have only one time very much just had the impression that I should say something to someone out in public. I was next to a mom at a gym where we go to the same class together. I did not know her personally. And I looked over, and this is a really common mistake that I see, is people will switch their kid from rear facing when they're younger, and they'll go to take that same convertible car seat and they'll flip it so the child can see forward. But when you do that in any car seat, you have to move how the seat is attached to the vehicle. Okay. And so just because it was seat belted or using those lower anchors through one belt path to be rear facing, they on every single car seat have to be switched which way they're attached to be forward facing. And so unless they're the new super cool rotating ones, but that's a tangent, but I wasn't that fancy back in the day, but she had it installed with the rear facing lower anchors through the lower facing, through the lower belt path, but had the seat forward facing. Okay. So I kind of could look at it from very far away and be like, oh, that's not quite right. And the concern about how that is installed is that in a car accident, that would cause a lot of forces to flip the seat forward. Oh. Because if it's not being held back against the seat, like you think about your backside pressing into your chair, it can't get any of that force. It would just flip forward. Okay. And I knew that she was pretty chill and cool for being in class. And I was like, hey, I just noticed this part is buckled into the wrong spot. I'd love to help you with it if you didn't know. I know sometimes when you're switching stuff around that can happen. And she was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Thank you for telling me. And she was so great about it. And we got it switched, done correctly. And the first thing she did in the class was she told her other friend and was like, I had my kid in wrong. It was super unsafe. And she totally helped me fix it. It was super chill and cool about it. And that's awesome. I love that she recognized my heart on it.
Yeah, good.
And she passed along the good word of hey, it's so easy to make a simple mistake when you're doing things quickly. Someone trying to call you out on it is not trying to judge you, your parenting. They just might see an opportunity to help.
Yeah. Yeah, because
that's good with so many things.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's good advice for probably everything. We could all be a little more humble, in some of those things, which it's hard. I mean, it's, because we all want to be, nobody wants to be called out, so that is harder. And so, but good job. It sounds like you handled that situation perfectly. It sounds like she did too, actually, as far as,
She did great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She did great. And it's something that we very much want to make sure our profession, like I said, that we are not here to judge.
Yeah.
And it was a situation where it was appropriate for me to talk to her, being a general acquaintance. With the seats and making those mistakes, the biggest thing I see people do day to day is that they'll move car seats from car to car. Mm-hmm. And it seems like something like, oh, caregiver has it, grandma has them, this. The more times we're moving a car seat or that we're doing anything in a hurry in life, really, the more mistakes we make just from our brain not being all the way there. And so if it's at all possible, I always want to if people are financially able to do so, I love to recommend people that one of the best things they can do is own a seat for more than one vehicle. It's such a benefit to have one in each caregiver's car. Sometimes the temptation, I think, is to buy your kid the most expensive or the fanciest thing.
Sure.
You want to have all the bells and whistles, but oftentimes it may be a better option to maybe have a variety. And all car seats in the United States are required to pass the same safety testing. And so I've had people be like, oh, well, I didn't want to get my kid one of those car seats.
Sure.
And so I really want to always spread the word to people that the right car seat for your kid is the one that fits your child, your vehicle, and that you can install correctly every time. And if it doesn't meet those three things, then I don't care if it's $450. I think I saw one recently was like $650 actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or $60. I don't.
Because they all pass the same test.
It's going to, you might, and we know with our clothing too, you might have different features. We love sometimes different features. And if those features make you use it correctly, we love that.
Sure.
And although when I do say that all the seats pass, the United States car seats that have passed the same testing, that is seats that are sold by a authorized retailer. Okay. So if they're being sold in person at your Target, your Walmart, your children's boutiques.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and this is a big thing I've been involved with recently is there are now counterfeit car seats.
Oh, really?
And they're being sold very easily because we get third-party sellers on Amazon. So if you are purchasing online, it needs to be from that manufacturer or from or from an authorized retailer. There are retailers that do occasionally sell through Amazon that also maybe have their own authorized online boutique or store somewhere else and then are selling on Amazon. But if it's not in those specifications, we should be shopping smart. Okay. And so we're finding more and more counterfeit car seats at the hospital and at community checks. I've seen some out in the community. Other things to look for is that I always tell people when something seems too good to be true, probably is, the prices tend to be cheaper. The one that's being counterfeited most commonly is a car seat that is $600.
Oh, wow.
And so people are like, oh, I got a good deal. They're paying $300 plus for the counterfeits. It's still wild. And they don't have the labeling that says they've passed the testing. They don't say the height and weight and all the specifications the kids should have. So we're looking for consistent labeling. We want to make sure we purchased it from somewhere that's okay. We want to make sure that it looks like a United States car seat. We want to make sure it has all the pieces that a United States car seat should have. And
so there is a risk then with buying those counterfeits. You're saying it may not work, right? Because it's not actually passing these tests. And so, which is the benefit of these tests is to secure us and, help us and stuff like that. But
yeah, okay. It was on the news recently. They showed some of the clips from the crash testing of the counterfeit car seats. And a seat will move in a crash. We expect them to move, which is actually really shocking to people. You think, I got it so tight, it's not going to move. They're going to move with crash forces, but the idea is that it is moving in a way that is limiting injury or reducing injury.
Sure.
Or softening crash forces, all those things. These seats, however, are shattering, just like plastic exploding.
Wow.
And so I did actually have someone openly tell me that they got theirs. They're like, oh, I just think it's a generic. And I was like, oh, generic and counterfeit are not necessarily the same thing. My Kirkland brand pants are a generic.
Sure.
This car seat is a safety hazard.
Yes.
And is not going to keep your child safe. Not just, maybe not even keep them safe, may even cause additional harm.
Yes.
And they were like, what? Like, but why are they allowed to be sold? And they're technically not, but eBay and Amazon cannot ban sellers as quickly as they just make new.
Yeah, new accounts.
They just make
like
new accounts.
I have heard that on other things, I've not necessarily with car seats, but I have heard that that's a problem with some other things. You know, some things that Walmart or Target wouldn't sell, but Amazon can, or at least people on Amazon can, right? You know, that are maybe, yeah. So that's okay. That's important to know. So that's important to know.
Yeah, there was one exception, I guess, recently to an in-person, and it was Walmart did get a shipment of some counterfeit booster car seats.
Interesting.
And because it was a shipment that arrived to their store, I mean, most people that are unpacking stuff would be like, oh, okay, I guess it's okay, slap it on the shelf. So sadly, I had to really encourage people, again, to be like, we're looking for labeling that is consistent with saying that it's meeting the federal motor, like, highway safety standards.
Okay.
We're wanting to make sure that it says where it was created. We want to see what is that street that it was produced on. We want to see when it was made, and all of those things, like the model number. We need it to look. We need it to have all those legit
sure.
things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so shifting gears a little bit, tell me, how do you see your role changing in the future? Any initiatives or anything, possibly changing in this area, in the future and stuff like that? Or how do you see your role changing? Or will it change?
I don't know how it would change over the future. Like I said, I work as so the term is PRN, but it's Latin for a term of on-call.
Yeah.
And so I would love the opportunity to do it more readily. I think it would be fantastic if child passenger safety was something that was available maybe with longer hours there. I would always love to work more at doing what I love. So I don't necessarily think that the capacity would change in any way that I could foresee, but I would always be excited about it becoming something that's bigger.
Okay. Tell me about some of the biggest, rewards of your job / biggest challenges of your job right now.
The biggest rewards of the job is absolutely the final send-off with parents or caregivers when they thank you for helping them keep that child safe. There is nothing better than the relief in their eyes to know that they get that satisfaction. Like there's so many things as a parent that you hope you're doing the right thing. There might be some sort of benchmark later on, but this is such a good one where they can install that seat, put that child in it, or teach that older child what they're doing, have a professional watch it happen and say no, you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah.
Look at that. This is helping keep them safe. And just that relief in their eyes of okay, on our little parenting checklist, look at this thing we're doing right.
Like it. Tell me, if somebody wanted to follow in your footsteps, kind of do this same kind of thing, tell me what advice you would give them.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with a friend the other day. She works in the tech industry, but formerly worked in education.
Okay. And
she was telling me how she missed working with children. And so I actually told her that she should look up the Safe Kids website and look for that child passenger safety training course, because anyone can take it. Although you can be affiliated with an organization or job, you absolutely can go pay for that training. It is not inexpensive, but I don't think necessarily it's overly expensive for the amount of training you're getting. I think I was even fed all my meals for the 3 days.
Okay.
And at the time I took it, it was around $300. And there is ongoing dues and continuing education courses you do take.
Okay.
But there are also grants and different ways to get that paid for people that may not necessarily be doing it for a job, but don't have the money to keep funding it. So I know people that do it exclusively as a volunteer,
Okay.
but they are using grants and different things to get those trainings paid for.
That way they're not losing money kind of thing.
Yeah, they're not losing money.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Because as far as hours per week, I mean, what's the time commitment on something like this?
If you were doing it just on a strictly volunteer basis, I'd say your opportunities would probably be on an actually bi-monthly basis.
Okay.
I typically get invited to do community events, which are ones that I would have done before I had a job.
Yep.
And they usually pop up about every other month if I want to have that opportunity. And they're usually restricted to like evenings after people get off work or Saturday.
Okay.
So very something that you could fit in when you're working around a different 9 to 5.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, not a huge time commitment. And going back to your mom's comment, helping create your community, right? Giving you, a little outlet, maybe if you're a, stay-at-home mom and you want to have something else to do, I guess, right? Or anybody really, but I guess, just giving more outlets, right? More opportunities to volunteer and do stuff or work or do.
Yeah, actually, the one of the coworkers I have that I work with, he only does it one day a week.
Okay.
And I asked him how he got into it, and he was a stay-at-home dad that was getting lonely.
Perfect.
He
Good.
was a stay-at-home dad. His
Love
wife
it.
actually works in the upper hospital management, and so he was staying home with their 2 kids. And so he was lacking a community, and so she actually recommended it to him, and he has been phenomenal.
Okay, that's awesome.
And so I have a brother that's actually interested as well, because at his 9 to 5, he's doing one job, but he's also always had a passion for teaching and working with children. And so he's looking into it because he wants that additional community and that opportunity. But so it's a way to kind of add something maybe you don't get in I sometimes call like my grown-up job.
Sure.
Or my other job I have.
Yeah.
I mean, my non-passion job.
Well, I like that you mentioned that because, so obviously it's not just for one gender. You're saying, hey, this is for everybody, anybody that really wants to do this, right? I like that. Okay.
Absolutely. One of the most influential people we have got involved in his 50s after losing his daughter in a car accident.
Oh, wow. Sure.
He was really grieving, and he was trying to figure out a way that he could use that grief constructively. And so he started working as a volunteer for Zero Fatalities, a nonprofit organization to help adults be safe in the car as well. And he now is a child passenger safety technician. And so, any stage of life too, we absolutely welcome that diverse experience, because I think too, when you're working with helping other people, it's nice to have that additional way that you could maybe be able to relate to them. And with him especially, I think he's trilingual. And so it's just an absolute asset to have that additional communication. I say that the hardest part of my job and where I fail the most is I am not bilingual, and I desperately wish I was, because I think every time I work with a translator, I know that I'm losing part of that interaction.
Of course you are. Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me, in what ways has working at Primary Children's helped your own parenting? I guess, some of the things that you've learned from working with different families, helping different people, how has that translated into you as a better parent, I guess?
Oh, I don't know if it's made me a better parent yet.
I'm sure it has.
I actually was going to work more at the hospital and was struggling to coordinate childcare for older kids in the summer.
Yeah.
It is a huge issue, and it's something our community needs to work on truly, that there is not good opportunities for older children that maybe aged out of daycare but don't necessarily want to be home alone. Yeah. And so I actually had to choose, am I going to work there multiple days or more limited? And I had to ultimately choose that I needed to be more limited so that I could take care of them. So I don't know if it's made me better, but it absolutely made me have to evaluate like who or what's gonna happen. And I work on call now, so for me, it may be something that when my kids leave for school in the morning, my daughter asks me, "Oh, will you be home after school?" And I'll be like, "Probably." And then maybe not. Maybe I get called to the hospital and I'm there. And so I think it's been a big growth opportunity for them. They're old enough to be home alone. Yeah. And it's been a good growth opportunity for them to take care of each other and communicate with me, communicate with other people and neighbors. And I think truly now they're excited. Yeah. Oh, good. Look, mom's gone. What? Should we
party?
Call? Yeah. Is it a party or the cool snacks?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get out the stuff that she hid.
But it is also working with especially I guess when I work at the hospital with children that have more complex medical needs, I think that just always gives you that extra moment to be like, this is a hard thing I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But this could also be a lot harder.
Yes. Yeah.
When I had my son years ago, he did have his complex medical needs, but we had taken him up to Salt Lake for some additional care. And just within minutes of just being in a busier hospital setting up there, we went, we could have a lot of additional challenges too.
Yeah.
It was a very humbling experience to be around such complex medical needs.
Yeah.
And I'm never someone that is going to pity another, because that's such a disservice to people in the situations they are, because no one's a martyr. We are all just taking care of the children we have as best as we can.
Yeah.
But it does at the same time also, every time you see someone in a different circumstance, you're going to go, oh, I appreciate what mine is. And so I love that. It reminds me of just what great privileges I have.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the benefits of serving in any capacity, right? Is always going to be that, right? You get to see other families and how they're acting, and yeah, you're grateful for your own problems per se, right? Charlene, this has been great. This is great to learn about some of the resources that people have available to them here, especially now closer for us that live here in Lehi. Anything we didn't cover? Anything else that you wanted to hit on? I think this has been a good comprehensive thing, but anything else that we didn't hit on?
I have a super quick soapbox that I love to share when it comes to child passenger safety. We do a disservice to our children when we think of car seats or safe travel in the car as just something for newborns, infants. When I was doing some ongoing training recently, they highlighted that currently the group that is at greatest risk for injury in a car accident is actually 8 to 12.
Okay.
Because they are a group that in our minds we're like, oh, they're not fitting their harness car seats, they must be fine, they must be good to go. And so I always want to stress to people that we need to make sure that, like I said, with the car seat fitting the car and the child, we want to make sure that we don't jump to get our kid to the next like kind of milestone of child safety. I think people get excited like, oh, it's so exciting, like I can forward face them now, or I can get them out of this harness and into a booster seat. We don't necessarily in other capacities celebrate our kids moving to something that we're not going to be so excited. They don't legally have to wear a helmet at this activity now, or legally have to wear a seatbelt now. We want them to be as safe as they can be. And so just because your child isn't legally required when they're like that 8, 9 years old in Utah, I believe the law, to be in a car seat, if they don't fit that car correctly, to really kind of examine what your hang up is on why you think that kid can't sit in a booster seat. A lot of children will pop in my car that are as young as 5, and they're like, oh, my parents don't make me sit in a car seat. And I'm like, I am not going to get into it with you about how your parent does things. You guys work that out. But in my car, I need to transport people in the way that I know is safe. So I've got some options for us, and we are going to sit in those safe options. And so I just always want to encourage people to reevaluate their idea of when we might necessarily be done with car seats. I know it's so exciting to chuck the final one in the garbage and just be like, we did it, sweet, we're done. But we have an opportunity to keep those slightly older kids safe, and let's take that opportunity.
And I guess maybe then speak to that just for a second here. But so, you said 8 to 12, that's the most. So once they're, out of a car seat, out of a booster seat, I guess the question is, what criteria you say fit right? So tell me what that means, I guess. Tell me, if somebody, how do I know no more booster seat, no more, car seat? How do I know?
We do. We actually have a test for it.
Okay,
and it's an easy thing you can Google, because every time I'm put on the spot, I can say all 5, and then I usually stumble on one of them. So
Sure.
You're looking for the 5-step test for looking to see if your kid can graduate out of a car seat. And I mean, you and I are sitting in chairs. If you're thinking about how you fit in a chair, although what's hilarious is I do not fit in this chair. So you want to make sure that they can have that soft bend in the knees.
Okay.
They're not, a lot of kids will try to stick their legs out straight to get their butt all the way back and be like, look, I fit the back. And you're like, well, your feet now don't touch the floor. So we need their feet on the floor of the car. We need to have their knees have an actual natural bend.
Okay.
But at the same time, we want to make sure that their backside is making full contact with that seat.
Okay.
And we'll get to where they might hit one of them, but they might be fudging another. And then we want to make sure that the belt is off their neck. And we want to make sure that the lower part of the seatbelt is hitting on your actual pelvis.
Okay.
One of the things that happens when a kid isn't big enough for a full seatbelt is that the belt will go up on their soft tissue of their abdomen. And just from the basic physics of that is where you're going to get injuries.
Damage,
if
sure.
you have a belt on their neck, if you have a belt across their belly, you're going to get increased risk of injuries from that. And so when a child is making that, or smaller adult is making that full contact with as much as they can, that car is they're going to be safer in that vehicle. I always tell parents, there is no 100% guarantee of safety in any situation. Sadly, there are absolutely still car accidents that will not be survivable.
Yeah.
But as with all activities that I do with my kids, I say we do dangerous things safely. We're still going to go do those fun things.
Sure.
We're still going to go snowboarding. We're still going to go skiing, but we're going to wear helmets. We're going to go drive our cars, which cars are inherently a huge opportunity that we are saying, we're not as safe as we could be.
Yeah.
But we're going to put those seatbelts on, and we're going to follow as many rules as we can, and then we're just going to mitigate that risk.
Sure.
So
Sure.
we're making sure those kids have mitigated as many risks as we can, and even if they may be not the same as their friend that doesn't have to.
Yeah. No. Thank you, Charlene. I appreciate that. I think that's, again, a lot of good information, help a lot of parents out there that have kids, young kids, older kids, kind of know what to do and what resources are available for them. So thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Roots and Branches of Lehi. I hope today's story helped you feel a little more connected to the people who make up our community. Remember, every person here has a unique story, and together, we're what makes Lehi feel like home. If you know someone who would be a great fit for this podcast, please fill out the form in the show notes so we can reach out and schedule an interview. We'd love to hear from you. A big thank you to our sponsors, the Work Harding Home Mortgage Team and Play Harding Nightly Vacation Rentals, for supporting this show and helping us bring our community closer together. Until next time, keep growing those roots and reaching out to your branches. Take care.